Distance in dog training. That's what's important. That's the hallmark of a great trainer. And you see it with my quarter mile sit, stay, recall. Also, it's what separates movie dog trainers from everybody else. And that's what we're talking about. I'm joined today by the last of the legendary Lassie trainers, Robert Weatherwax. You're going to see Rin Tin Tin who was trained over 100 years ago by my role model, Lee Duncan, doing stuff that's probably can't be filmed in USA anymore, working about a quarter mile in between horses and riders, switching directions, and it's very dangerous. I would not subject my dogs to that. It's too dangerous, but this is an incredible feat of dog training. This is something you're going to learn in this, how movie dog training is applicable to all types of dog training. You're going to learn things you're not going to learn anywhere else because it's a secret, the magic of movie dog training. So this is season 2, as I've said, in episode 1. And what we're doing this season is we're talking about movie dogs training and how it's going to apply to you and any type of dog training, actually, not just pet dog training, but anybody. And one of the big things we're going to talk about is the factor that movie dogs have to work at a distance, or TV dogs, all of it. We have to work at a distance. We don't get to do things really close. So there is a lot of things that go into being able to create this distance, and I'm going to talk about those. We're going to go through kind of a checklist here at the beginning. Now, remember, everybody, this is not exactly a step-by-step tutorial. It can't be. That's too long. That would take 20, 30 hours for us to cover. So just part of the rationale for the distance is that it's impossible for TV film dog work to be done close, like I've said. This is, again, totally different than pet dog training or sport dog training. Sport obedience is usually very close to you. Some instances the dog is sent out, but most of it is within about 12 inches of you. We don't ever get to work that close. 12 inches is incredibly nothing to us. And also it requires a lot of prerequisite skills before you can get that distance, and we're going to talk about that. Now, if you look at some of our prior work, we've talked about some of the things that are very, very important, but I'm going to go over them again because I'm going to assume that you haven't seen any of our other stuff. And one of the big things that the distance also has to encompass is the dog cannot appear to be robotic. The dog has to look natural, and the dog also, this is something that's very different with movie, TV work, that's very different than anywhere else, is that the dog has to be capable of varying his speed. Because, why? Because the dog is an actor. The dog is not anything other than an actor. So at different times, an actor has to move slowly, has to move quickly, or has to change speed, or has to stop. And these are really incredibly intricate sort of skills to teach a dog, because many people who have done sport obedience, for example, or pet dog training, who are emulating the sport obedience, try to teach dogs to do everything as fast as possible, sit as fast as possible, down as fast as possible, stand as fast as possible. But this doesn't work for us. We got to be able to control the speed of the dog, have him come to you slowly, speed up, slow down, stop. All of these things are not in sport obedience whatsoever. So this is where the actor part is very, very important. And I'm going to go through some of the prerequisite skills. Then Robert's going to talk about some of this stuff too. Now, we're a little bit different in our training, but we're similar because we're going to have mark training. Using the uses of marks are things that we place on the ground or on pedestals or platforms for the dog to know to go to that. And that allows us to train many other behaviors from there. But the dog must know these mark. That's one of the things that has to be trained. And of course, in my case, I start out with pedestal or perch training, platforms. The dog is learning to get up on things immediately. This makes it very clear for them, especially for marks, what they're on. Dogs work best with concrete. The more concrete it is, the better. The faster the dog's going to learn. When it's abstract and it's something that they have to try to guess at, they don't do well. And then, again, one of the things that we're kind of both known for, something we've talked about before, is that we use a 50-foot leash. And this is incredibly important. You won't see many other people besides us using this 50-foot leash, and there's a lot of reasons we do that. But this is a skill we want to have before we start developing distance without the leash. And one of those things that we're going to do with that 50-foot leash, of course, is have a recall, and we're going to vary the distances. Robert's talked about that before in one of our prior episodes, but we're going to use that leash to reinforce doing recalls all of the time. Now, one of the other things that we have to talk about with a prerequisite skill is that the dog is trained off of signals. Now, signals are everything. Voice is a signal, but we want the dog also trained on body or arm or hand motions, because you cannot talk in certain instances, especially if you're doing stage work in a theater. You cannot talk. You cannot be talking to the dog. Some people use what we call silent whistles. You can do that, but you want to have the dog trained so that it's not relying on voice, which too many people, pet dog trainers and sport obedience guys, over rely on the voice alone. We got to have more than that. And I basically I'm 90-something% off of body control, motions, movements, and that. And for example, I'll give you an example. I had trained my jungle dog to back up, but my backup signal, I had a thing that I was going to do for a commercial in Thailand where the guy was tied up. And now the guy was going to give him the signal to move backwards, couldn't do it with his hands because he's tied. He couldn't do it with his body. So I have my dog trained, if you can see it in some of my prior videos, to move backwards when I twist my shoulder towards him. That's the signal. That's a body signal. A lot of people don't do that, but I was incorporating what this scene was going to be about, where the guy's tied up. It didn't happen, but I had trained him for that scene, and a lot of people don't think about that. So any part of the body that the dog can see, and dogs pick up very, very well on body motions, far better than they do on audio. And too many people use language, in my opinion. That's one of the things. Now, and I've covered quite a bit of things, so I want to let Robert have a chance to say what he wants to say on parts of this, and then I'll get back into some more specifics that go on to this. But the whole thing we're looking for here is distance. That's what you have to get that in your mind, everyone, that movie dogs work at a distance. We never work really close. Never, never, never. So we have to have a dog that is reliable at a distance. In fact, it's a joke to us to see people who do recall training at 6 feet with a leash. It's just, this is nothing. This is not even training wheels. This is worse than a tricycle, and we're trying to get to the unicycle, as it were. So anyway, Robert, what do you? I mean, I covered a lot. So what do you want to throw in there at this point?
Well, first I want to let everybody know that I am here and I did not die last year. I passed away last August, and there was a lot of obituaries that had my face in it and indicated that I might have died, or maybe we both died in some horrific car accident or something. But no, I'm still here, and I'm the last of my family's dynasty as far as dog trainers go. And I've been working around dogs for a very long time. But I will tell you that my dad didn't use a lot of marks, nor did Rudd. What they used a lot more of were landmarks, things that the dog would recognize. Because the whole key to dog training is really creating distance. And as Christophe mentioned, you don't always have the luxury of using voice. And of course, there's variations on when you can use voice when you're working on a set. For example, when you're working on a movie set, you can actually speak, but you can't overlap the actor's dialogue for editing purposes. Too many trainers, like Christophe mentioned, rely so much on being close to the dog. And that's a really nice luxury. But that's why we use the 50-foot leash, because we're trying to get the distance that you can't get with a regular transit leash, what I call a transit leash, to get a dog from here to there, maybe work them in the house. But when I'm outside, that 50-foot leash is always present. It's always dragging. People see it. It's bright orange most of the time, the ones I get. It makes it, as my dad would say, it stands out like a turd in a punch bowl. But everybody knows what I'm doing, that there's something different about what this guy's doing. And Christophe is the same way. I mean, when you see somebody who's doing something that seems odd, what I like to call it is revolutionary. The things that we were doing 20, 30 years ago are things that people are claiming to invented today. Distance is always what it's about, whether you're working with sporting dogs or you're working with movie dogs. The 50-foot leash plays a big part in being able to maintain control from a distance and be able to make corrections from a distance without touching the dog or going after the dog to reposition them or whatever you need to do. So you have to be very aware of letting dogs figure things out. It's very important to let them figure out, where they can be comfy. And then I always start from the outside in. When I'm working with a dog, whether it's stay or heel or go with, it always starts out really loose, and then we tighten it gradually. Because most of the time when you're doing a go with or a heel, there should be variations, whether you want it to be a little bit looser or you want it to be real tight and rigid, like you would see, if you're doing a performance or something, or it's a canine unit and the dog's right next to their handler. That's fine, but you don't always have that luxury. Movie training is a little bit different. And Christophe has been exposed to the same kind of people like Carl Miller. And of course, through Carl Miller, we have the knowledge of Frank N., who trained Benji, and my grandfather. And all of them used food, amazingly. I know there's a lot of people out there, trainers out there, who think that food is a detrimental device, but it actually accelerates the training to a point where you can get a lot more from a dog who's working for reward than a dog who's working strictly out of fear of making a mistake. So you have to let a dog be a dog, and they need to be natural, and you need to establish distance. So
go a little bit deeper on some of the things that Robert was saying. It's very important to know that we do want the dog to figure things out on his own. We don't want to program the dog, as it were. I mean, as in they can't make any decision without us. That some of the sport obedience people, actually one of my first mentor, a huge mentor, I mean, influential to everybody in the dog training world for decades, was a person who didn't want a dog to make any decision on his own. It's just like the French Foreign Legion. You don't make a step without them telling you to do it. But if they tell you to jump off a cliff, you'll jump off a cliff. That's the same sort of what he considered discipline. But we want dogs that are capable of figuring things out on their own, just like a sled dog. The lead dog has to be able to make rational decisions on his own, otherwise you can all die. And you have to rely on your dog. We rely on our dogs a lot more. We don't want the dog just to be reliant on us. So that comes from a lot of the things that we do. We can't cover all of that right now, but again, the distance work is huge. Now, some of the things we covered, like the 50-foot leash, we're not going into details there, but we're just saying this is, when you see us do this, you won't see it with anybody else. Then the marks, you'll see people who are beginning to use marks, probably influence of Omar von Mueller, because he's been talking about this to the general dog training people. But this is something that's been going on for over 100 years. Now, this is something that Robert said. Now, I got to say again, we're some of the last guys to that whole generation of greatness that was in the generation before that of great trainers. Robert's whole family. There is no family in movie dog or TV dog training that equals that family. Going back, we know, of course, Carl Miller was a mentor to both of us, and probably the best dog trainer when he was alive that there was at movie and TV. Innovative and always coming up with new behaviors to do. And then, of course, we go back, my idol, Lee Duncan, which you see Rin Tin Tin talking about distance, the things you see him doing in a master shot, which the more you know about filming and dog training, the greater this work is to you. Just watching it, you think, oh, that's nothing. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to think, because the dogs are supposed to look natural. That's what we're trying for. We're not trying for dogs that look, oh, yeah, that dog is trained. We want you, just like an actor. You don't watch a great actor and say, oh, that guy went to Juilliard or that guy went to whomever is method acting. No, you want someone you believe that's the actual person. And there are many great actors. I could think of the whole Breaking Bad series. I thought everybody was the person that they played. I mean, it was just incredible acting. That's one example. But we want the dog the same way. Now, the thing that
we can't really cover in detail or every little point, because you might say, well, okay, what is a mark? What is a pedestal? What's a perch? I have, if you go through, you'll see different videos. I talk about this, but this again is something that if you're very interested, you can learn from us. That's the whole point of this. But we're trying to make this available to people. It's, basically, it's going to die with us if we don't get this. We don't have people who want to actually follow. But you got to be sincere and wanting to learn this. And getting back to what I was saying before, we are like the last conduit to a lot of this. And I mean, Robert's the last, as I say many times, the last of the legendary Lassie trainers. And I mean, how many hundreds of episodes were there of Lassie on TV? I mean, the movie work is one thing, but then there's all the TV work that was done. Nobody has that bulk. Nobody has that bulk of working. And so, I mean, Robert's seen and said, as we used to say, he's said, has seen and said it and done it all. So when we're talking about these things, these are tried and true methods, but there's also some innovations or merging. In my case, I merged the data-driven tactical dog stuff because a lot of people are just kind of, like, if you listen to them, trainers that do movie work, and there aren't very many anymore, but if you listen to them, they're kind of vague because they're using their intuition. Well, I just feel when the dog is ready. Well, that didn't work in tactical. We want to know. So there are ways to do that by using data, by having very specific sequential training, which I can get into, but not right here. And I can do it because we don't want to get into it. This be 20 hours, as I'm saying before. But you might say, hey, I'm a pet owner. So what are the benefits for me from this movie dog training? Well, some of them are, if your dog can do it at a distance, like I did a quarter-mile sit stay and my dog can go further than that, much further. I just don't have the infrastructure of people. If you want to help out, I can do a lot further than that. But the point is, if I can do a quarter mile, what is 10 feet to that dog? Nothing. And I see people struggling. I see pet dog trainers in the park struggling with 10 feet recalls, 20 feet recalls, and this is the point, 50-foot leash. We got 50-foot recalls going on all of the time, and then varying distances because the dog never knows. We don't have the dog, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. We don't do that like that. We change things up, just like because you don't know for a movie or a TV, you don't know how far the recall would go. And some of the things, terms that we use, like A to B, that means the dog starts at one location and we send the dog to another location. That's going from A to B. That's very common. You'll see that Robert mentioned go withs, and that's where you as the trainer tell your dog to go with an actor and walk with the actor. Now, this is something that sport dog people can't do. And this is almost magic to them because they have never worked with this, because they've never had their dog work with another person. The handler, the person who's working with the dog, is always close to the dog. Well again, example, as one of the Weatherwax's things with John Wayne, the dog was with the horse. And it was saying with John Wayne, the dog is sent to hang out with John Wayne, and the dog stays with John Wayne on his horse, even though John Wayne is moving around. The dog is switching sides, getting away from obstacles, obstructions, all these things. But it's very natural. It doesn't look like the dog is trained to do this. It just looks like the dog is doing it. But that's exactly the sign of great training. Robert can add to that because he knows that scene better than I do, obviously. But so if your dog can do it at a distance, they can do everything close. And it forms a better bond. Doing this type of training, you have a better bond with your dog. You have to understand your dog better. As I've always said, believe in your dog, believe in yourself. So, believe in your dog first. And this helps when you can do these things, especially with the marks and the distance and the go whiffs and the A to Bs. These are bread and butter for movie training. It's easier to train a dog to learn different things. It's sort of like math. You've got to have the adding and the subtraction before you can get it to multiplication and division and then on to geometry and calculus and those sorts of things. It builds on each other. And also, one of the things that we haven't mentioned clearly and stated, but the things we're talking about, we want the dog to think, right? We want the dog to figure things out. Well, that's because we are developing problem-solving dogs. We want dogs that can solve the problem. Sometimes a dog will figure things out for a scene himself or herself. which is great because if you have a dog that you've trained a lot, I know that in case of Frank Inn, Benji did this. Benji pulled off moves that they never learned before because he was just kind of ad-libbing from things he already knew. He had such a big repertoire. And I think Robert's been there with Betty, his dog. I think that's happened with him too. And this, again, when you're having a dog that's trained this way, the dog is more natural. The dog is more relaxed. The dog is actually calmer because he's not on, oh, I've got to come to attention. I've got to be, if you've ever been in the military whatsoever or a military school, there's no relaxing, really. I mean, you're always trying to get in between. Oh, they're not around. Okay, I can try to breathe now. But anytime they're around, you're always a little bit stressed. And this is the same thing with sport dogs, regardless of what people say. Any other way, it doesn't matter. But in our case, we want a relaxed dog. Now, you again look at the Lassie work. That dog does not look stressed. In many scenes, that dog has done so many different scenes. But anyway, again, I've covered a load, but that's the whole point. This is sort of like an outline. Go back and listen to it over and over and over. But I've said a bunch of things here, but Robert will add to them. I mean, if he wants to go with the John Wayne thing with the go whiffs and stuff, which is all distance work. It's, again, distance work. But, yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah. You know, a lot of it's trust, and I'll lead into that John Wayne thing. You know, getting dogs to work away from you. I know a lot of trainers are thinking, I'm going to work them close and then gradually get them away from you. But I feel like you should get them away from you immediately because it gives them confidence, for one. When we talk about exposure and, you know, distance, there's a lot of similarities in the two because the exposure is being away from you. That's what they're being exposed to. The exposure of being able to make decisions, be on different surfaces. And that's a big thing, different acoustics. When we worked on the set, we bring the dog to the set so they could, you know, hear the way our voice sounds when we're giving them commands in a sound stage because it's different. A kitchen sounds different than a living room. And of course, when we were talking about that confidence working away from you, it makes go with much easier to accomplish. If the dog's not comfortable being away from you, they're not going to be comfortable being away from you with somebody else. Horses, talking about other actors, talking about gun play. There's a lot of things. And that is what you want your dog to do, to be put in situations that are uncomfortable in the beginning. But be good. I mean, taking dogs everywhere.
Okay, so the things that people might be wondering is, okay, so what's the upshot of all this? Well, one, distance. And this is one of the things that I want to get through to everybody. We work at a bigger distance than anybody except maybe like anti-poaching dogs, certain tactical dogs. Yeah, I mean, I can think of boar hunting dogs also working at a very long range. Those are the only ones working at a huge range, but we're trying to get more behaviors that are capable at a distance. And again, watching this Rin 1010 footage is amazing. I mean, it is amazing. It's also very dangerous for the dog, but this is something that they would do back then. I wouldn't do it personally. I wouldn't risk my dog like Lee Duncan did there. But and again, she's thinking, okay, so I don't want my dog to do that. Okay, people, I've got to make something clear. You know, we are specifically for the people, like you could get by with a third grade education and do enough to survive or whatever, but that's not enough for most people. They aspire to more. The same thing with us. We are for the people who want to aspire to having a dog that can do more, they want to have a better relationship. So if you only want a third grade education for yourself or for your dog, I'm sorry, we're not for you. We're for the people who want to go to the next levels, because we are doing, and I have done things that other people can't do, thus the Jedi Dog Master Challenge that nobody's capable of doing, and they're not going to pull off the switch limp with a 100-pound plus dog with no tail. They're not going to do it. So the other parts are possible, but that part is not. So anyway, my point is we're here to add to everybody's ability and to give people a motivation, inspiration, but also talk about something that most people don't know about. They don't know about the marks. They don't know about the go whiffs, which is basically, again, you're the you're the handler, the trainer. You send the dog to another person, and they start walking with that dog or running with that dog, and they go somewhere else. You've seen it in a lot of movies, but you just weren't aware of it. You probably didn't know how it's. Nobody knows how it's done except us. Good luck trying to figure it out, because a lot of people won't be able to figure that out on their own. But all these things are possible because it builds, as Robert was saying, trust. And that's the bond. The trust and the bond are the same thing. The dog has to trust you. And when they're doing jumps and jumping into your arms from 10 feet or clearing up 10 feet, whatever, the dog has to trust you, or the dog will not jump. It's not the natural thing for a dog to want to jump and injure himself. So these sorts of things, and I'm talking about many, many things ahead of time, but it all stems from this distance. That's what separates us from the other types of dog training, is that we're always working on distance. And as Robert said, we tend to start out with distance and then pull the dog back in where everybody else is starting out very, very close. And they're like, okay, you're a foot away from me. Now you can be 3 feet away from me. Now you can be 5 feet. And a lot of people don't want the dog to be 5 feet away from them ever. We're a little bit different. We don't think 5 feet is much of anything. You see the videos of me with the dog in a park, or different dogs in a park. And part of that's because I want them to be able to do work. And to do work, they got to look natural. And it doesn't look natural when a dog is 12 inches away from your left side also. That's another thing. We train dogs to go left side, right side, behind us, in front of us. Also, to precede us. Also, in between the legs. That's a tactical thing. Looking at it again, you have a lot of benefits from this, because you're gonna be a better trainer. That's what our end goal is, actually, to make everyone a better trainer, have a better relationship with the dog. And this all starts by incorporating things that you don't know, because everybody else is telling you the same old things. We're interjecting and energizing people with something different because they don't know about this. Wouldn't you agree, Robert, that this is a totally...
Yeah, definitely, because that's why when I call myself a motivational trainer, really what that means is that I'm getting dogs to do things because they've learned to enjoy doing those things. They're not doing them out of a threat or through domination. They're doing it through repetition. I mean, that's really a key part of it. I mean, if I'm going to work a dog in a certain environment, I'm going to be in that environment and I'm going to rehearse it. Life is a rehearsal. Take some knocks, make some mistakes, throw yourself into it and see what you really can do. I mean, you're really not going to know what your dog can do if you're coddling them and working them from 4 feet away all the time and talking to them constantly. I see that all the time, all this over-guidance, this micromanagement of their dog. And really what the mark is about is getting a dog to feel comfortable with you walking around, not talking to them. And then when the time comes when you have to call them, they're ready to come. But they're always waiting for the command, and they're comfortable out there, so they're not making mistakes because they're not trying to be with you because they're insecure. They're looking around. They're being able to actually absorb the environment because they're not thinking, oh my God, how do I get out of here, right? And that's where dogs, as a private pet owner or trainer, having obviously movie roots, it's the same thing. You know, dogs make mistakes when they're afraid. When they see a car and they've never seen a car before, they run out in front of the car and they get killed. This is what you don't want a dog to be doing on a movie set. You want to start thinking like a dog. When you're seeing lights behind you, you got to think of what the dog is seeing in front of them, right? Whether somebody's going to come through the scene and they're going to fall down and drop a glass. That's something the dog should probably have heard before, unless, of course, the script says for the dog to freak out when they hear it. Then maybe it may not be a good thing to expose them to it ahead of time. But most of the time, that's not the case. The dog has to act as if, yeah, I've seen this before. I know what to do. And you don't get that when they're constantly looking for guidance. And, a lot of trainers want that. They're afraid of losing the eye contact with the dog because they're afraid that the dog won't snap back for a command when they need it. But you have to get a dog used to that, to where they're drifting away. Same with the recall. They're drifting away, sniffing. It's when they least expect you to call them is when you call them. You don't telegraph anything with the dog. You let them know, I could call you at any time. You just need to be ready. Have you ever seen the guy who's He's next door neighbor. His dogs bark all the time. They never go take him for a walk. And then, of course, when they get loose from the yard, they get lost. The reason they get lost is because they've never been around the neighborhood, right? They've never gone from point A to point B, which is what Christophe mentioned, that A to B thing. The dog needs to know, okay, over here there's a busy street. I should probably stay away from that. That's a boundary. We're teaching boundaries to dogs when we're working them on a set because they have to be in a certain space. They can't stray too far unless, depending on how wide the shot is or whatever. But, when we did Lassie, me and my dad and Rudd, everything was a master. Everything was so wide that, you could see there's no place for a trainer to be. And a lot of times, maybe Rudd would have a towel in his hand so the dog has a visual. But that doesn't mean the dog comes running to you. It's just that, hey, I'm over here. Once in a while, we'll want to get a look that says, what's over there, or, as the script, entails. But it's all improvisation. Life is improvisation. Training is improvisation. So you have to be prepared for any situation that comes up. A well-trained dog that's comfortable being away from you can make a mistake that doesn't even look like a mistake because it's so natural that the director will say, wow, I really loved it when the dog just scratched a flea there, right? But just did something out of the ordinary. And dogs don't do that when they're too nervous. They're not able to show their character and show that, what kind of a dog they are. And it always bothered me when, the dogs look mechanical, when they're too stiff or they're looking in one direction, or they're not looking at where the conversation is occurring, like in a scene where there's people talking over here, but the dog's looking over there. And it doesn't make any sense, but that's because the trainer's over there. And he hasn't learned to taught the dog to just chill. Don't look at me. When I want you to look at me, I'll make a gesture or something, a hand signal, wave a towel that says, look at me. But until that time happens, I just want you to be a dog, hang out on your island, and we'll come send a boat out to you eventually.
Yeah, there's a lot here. And so the thing is, people, that it's difficult for us to explain everything. At one time, we can't possibly do that. We can just scratch the surface, as it were. And I want to say that in future episodes, we'll talk more about some of these things that Robert's brought up and I've brought up. Definitely, we're going to talk about the crutches that we feel that a lot of dog trainers do with some of the training. Some of the things Robert mentioned are actually crutches that other trainers use, but we don't use them because we have a higher level of training, and I think that's what you want. And so when we expose some of those crutches, that's going to shock a lot of people in the dog training industry because we're pulling away their magic trick, as it were, in a way. That what they're doing is because, it works, but it's like a lower level than what we're aspiring to, and it doesn't look right for movie dogs. And certain tactical dogs can't get away with those crutches either. So we're going to talk about that and further, and we're going to talk more about the signals. We'll talk more about the perches and the pedestals. So, the overview is what we're trying to do in this first episode, and that is just the distance. Get this through your head, people. Distance, but there's a lot of ways. How does that distance happen? It's not just a magical thing you dream about at night. There's steps and procedures and sequences and sequential structuring of how the training has to go, and especially for the way that I do nowadays, since I'm data driven, and that's something for a different episode too. But again, everybody, we're just putting this out there basically as information for people because many people don't know. The majority of the dog training world doesn't know about any of this stuff. So we're just talking about it. These are not tutorials. Not if we're being pretty generous, like giving this stuff away as we are right now anyway, because back in our day, we had to apprentice to get this information. We had to pay our dues. We had to do a lot of work to get this. I mean, what I've just covered already is years and years of applying yourself, learning, and hoping that you continue as an assistant dog trainer or as the protege. And because you had to prove yourself, it's not this day of, you're going to demand things. It's like saying, hey, Led Zeppelin, free concert, but I want to tell you what your set list is going to be. No, it doesn't work that way. It's just an overview of everything. And this is episode 1 of season 2, and I hope that you're going to find this one very enlightening, because that's what we're trying to do. This is about, because we've noticed that many people don't know anything about movie dog training. They ask me to send me emails and stuff, and a lot of people, well, why do I need this? Well, it's a whole nother take on how to train dogs. Number 1. Number 2, again, the 3rd grade analogy. If you only want to be up to the 3rd grade, then go ahead, go on with you. That's not who we're trying to connect with. We're trying to connect with the people who are more serious, more dedicated, more invested, who want to do more, who want to spend time with their dog, but don't want to spend $10,000 and $20,000 on elaborate dog sports that need huge infrastructure.